afternoon, good evening, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are on live or watching us later. We appreciate your time. But before we begin, we've been fortunate enough to once again have our favorite friend on with us, Mr. Billy Joe Wright.
I
Welcome.
think we have a streak going with him, right? He is.
I know now. We told him he can't miss any shows now.
Listen, and now I show up from anywhere, right? I'm usually in our office, and now I'm from a conference in my hotel room. The reason why I make time for this is because when HLPTA started this series with the two of you, we were committed to getting to our personal stories and to making connections with our teachers. And this episode really kind of brings everything together that we've been working towards. And I'm really excited for us to do this next year. So hint, Ricardo and Teresa and whoever's the next president of HLPTA, I would like to see an episode next year with our students from ethnic studies, telling their stories, talking about what they're working on, talking about what projects they're doing. Before we bring on the other guests, because this is wrapping up this section of diversity and culturally inclusive teaching in the classroom, I wanted to take a minute and flip the script on you, Teresa and Ricardo.
Oh.
So I know you've planned these things out to the very minute, so I'm going to throw off your whole schedule. I know I'm going to do that, but you know what? Point of personal privilege as the president who will be gone in 8 months. I would like to ask each of you, what has this specific series meant to each of you, personally and professionally?
I guess I can start. As I think about me and my experiences as a student and what my mother experiences was being basically marginalized from my educational experience because of the language. And now I think about my daughter and how we are starting to see ourselves in what we're reading, to see ourselves in the stories that we're telling, to see ourselves on the way we are becoming important in our own experience. I have hope. And I'm looking forward to what that's going to look like for my daughter. Definitely.
Thank you for sharing, Teresa.
I think I have so many things I want to say, but I think just
say it.
I'll take over the whole show. Okay. But for selfish reasons, really, I think ever since this journey of this series, just the people we've talked to, the people we've met, Ron, his team, everybody, I have learned so much about myself and a lot of things that were lacking in my education growing up. And I think just similar to Ricardo, just that challenge of, language getting in my way, where my first year I didn't talk at all because of language and really feeling like I didn't fit in most of my education. And I just remember that moment when I was younger and I wondered what it would feel like to see someone like me in what I'm studying. I wonder what it feels like. And I literally remember sitting there in the elementary class thinking to myself, that must feel really nice to see yourself, in your education. And I never did. And so selfishly, I'm learning so much about myself, but also it's making me think as an educator as well, for our kids, for my daughter, for my son, for the future. We really need to make a way so that they can see themselves in what they're learning, because it makes them, it makes them feel important, makes them feel special, and it makes education so much more important. So,
the one thing that I'll say from being a president and kind of seeing these spaces open up more and kind of having a seat at the table is how many seats we can open at the table and then create our own barriers to each other. I want to let that sit a minute. To where, the more spaces that we open up and the opportunities that we have, how often are we actually seeing people uplift each other's voices versus becoming competition with each other? And I say that in today's episode because when we start to talk about ethnic studies in the classroom, we are talking about challenging systemic barriers and the whole systems themselves, while we're asking people to be vulnerable, to tell their stories and to learn their stories. Correct. But how are we going to model uplifting each other's stories and voices and choices versus becoming competitive with them? So I just want to let that sit as you as you continue on with this show and we bring in our guests, because I think that that's going to be something we're going to need to keep in mind over the next few years as we really start to see what we've seen here, right? With you two and the people we're about to bring on, these leaders develop, and from our classes, these leaders are going to develop. And I think we also have to model how it's okay sometimes to step aside and walk alongside people, walk behind them. And it doesn't have to mean that we're always in competition with each other. There's enough space out there. We just need to feel comfortable enough to go and own it and encourage each other to do that. So with that said, I am so proud to bring on a couple of our members and one of our prior guests. So bring them on.
All right, bring them on. And thank you, Billy, for making us think about that. I like that a lot. And here we go. Here they come.
I brought Ron in first in case you wanted him to introduce who's joining us, Teresa. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome
What's up,
back,
everybody?
Ron.
Hey, thank you for having me. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see Billy Joe, Teresa, Ricardo.
Ron, thank you for coming back.
Absolutely. I couldn't stay away. I've listened to every episode since I was on, and it has been wonderful. I learned a lot from Dr. Isaiah's episode. I really appreciated the story she told. The Filipino American History Month episode was as a part Chicano, part Filipino person who's continuing to search for my Filipino identity and reclaim my cultural legacy and my cultural roots. That was a very powerful episode. And these are amazing. I love it.
And Ron, when you made some comments in the chat during that, and I thought it was so important for us to think about that when we are teaching ethnic studies in our classrooms, because oftentimes, even like me, we're learning our own ethnicities and histories sometimes as we go.
Yep.
And so it's so important that we do understand that even sometimes what we think we know, right? That what we know about our history, what we know about ourselves, we learn more as we dive deeper and explore. And I think that's going to be the most powerful thing, is allowing space for people to grow and evolve with what they know about themselves and their own families.
I love that. And it's never too late. It's never too late to reclaim our cultural legacy. It's never too late to reclaim our ancestral knowledge or our ancestral legacy. And it's not too late to learn. And we're all authentic, right? Whatever we are, however we show up, we're authentically ourselves. And there's so many different iterations of culture and race and the way that we express ourselves. And so we just have to be comfortable with who we are and how we've been raised and what experiences we've had. So, and y'all shows have helped me to see that even more. So I love it.
Thank you so much. So are you ready, Ron, to introduce some of your team that's here with us today?
Absolutely. So excited to have two of our high school ethnic studies teachers. We're going to have a third one joining us midway through the show. So first, I just want to say that, I came into Hacienda La Puente Unified School District as a consultant, and one of the core group of folks that I was working with was this high school group of the inaugural high school ethnic studies teachers. I have learned so much from them, and they've welcomed me into the community, and we've built community amongst each other. And one of my big decisions to change from where I was to come over here was to work with this incredible team. And I got to see that on full display today. We did a presentation at the LA County Office of Education Ethnic Studies Conference, and it was very moving to be there and co-present with them. So first off, we got Wesley Perez, who is our inaugural high school ethnic studies teacher at La Puente High School. Anybody that knows Wesley knows that he brings so much energy and so much love to his students, to the community, to everybody that knows him. His energy is like infectious. Sometimes I'm tired of just being around Wesley, but I also appreciate being around Wesley because it pumps me up. I don't know some of it's coffee, but I don't know, some of it's also inside of his spirit. And so I just love and appreciate that. We also have Christine Sardo, who's here with us today. I kind of look to her as our leader, the leader that pulls us together, that keeps us on track and that keeps us moving. And she also wears many hats at Workman High School and is such a wonderful emissary for all the positive things that are happening at Workman High School, in the classroom, out of the classroom, on the sports field, with culture and with civic engagement. And her legacy at Workman High School has been really excited to learn about. And I'm excited to be a part of that next chapter that she's putting on the map for the high school that she represents. And that goes the same for all of our teachers. And so, yeah, so thanks for letting me do that little intro.
Before I jump out of here and let you carry on with the show that you had planned now that I've made you run late, I want to acknowledge everything Ron just said, because Wesley makes me tired just watching him on social media. So I want to second that emotion and give a shout out to Wesley. Wesley, you are the best of us as teachers, as community members, and I as a HLPTA member, and I appreciate you. And then I have to give a shout out to my teaching partner, my best friend, my mentor, the Thea to my dog. I'm the Theo to her little son. So shout out to Miss Sardo's son and my nephew Carson. Dun, dun, dun. He'll get what that means. No one else will. And I just have to tell you the immense amount of pride that I feel. With 8 months left as president, I could not be more proud. And I don't want to get emotional. I could not be more proud to be part of this episode. From the guest that we have today to I see one of my former students that is part of the LGBTQ community like I am, who went through her own challenges and is a leader herself and her family and her community. I have to tell you that it is ethnic studies is broader than one thing. You have all designed it to be intersectional, and so if there was one reason for me to step away from the kids in the classroom in my community, it would be to get to this point today with this episode, so that I could then return to the classroom and be part of this amazing work that you're all doing. So before I become a little crybaby on this show, which is okay to be a crybaby, I just want to thank you all deeply from the bottom of my heart. You make me feel like my purpose for stepping out of the classroom has been worth it. I will be watching like I always am on the side, and you all are the very best of us. So thank you very much. I'm going to go get some tissue. Have a good show, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Billy.
Thank you, Billy Joe. Oh my goodness. Billy always does that to us, doesn't he? He makes us think, and then he makes us cry. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's continue on. Thank you, Billy Joe, for that wonderful intro. And thank you, Ron, for introducing to us some of your team here. We're so excited to be with everyone. We know that was a long intro, but totally worth it, you guys. So we're going to continue on with this series, the very last episode for this year of this series, Embracing Diversity. And we are in episode 5 today, How Ethnic Studies Will Transform Your Classroom and Students. So we've already briefly introduced our guest today, and we're so happy to be here together with you. Ricardo and I are pretty much just going to drive, and they have a lot that they want to share with us. So we're so happy they're here with us. And our purpose for this whole series was to examine the importance of embracing human diversity. And specifically for this episode, we want to learn about ethnic studies and how it impacts all our classrooms and our kids. And we want to reflect on the journey, because this is not something new this year. This is something that they've already been doing. So reflect a little bit about the journey, along with what goals we have for the future when it comes to ethnic studies. So let's continue. And we always, I know, we're not going to say anyone gets tired of seeing our kids, but we always have to bring our kids into this, especially to this whole series, because they are our personal whys of why this is so important to us to do episodes like this. Ricardo, go ahead. I know you want to say something here.
No, I think I already mentioned, right? I'm very hopeful, right? And I'm very, I look forward to what her educational experience is going to be because of the changes that we're having and what we have now.
Me too. Yeah, I'm excited that my daughter is going to be part of this, and she's going to have, classes that incorporate ethnic studies and, very different experience in mine. Oh, hello. I want to say hi to our special guest. Oh, she just got shot. All right. So let's continue. unless you want to stare at our kids longer. But and these are our HLP USD kids here, and they're our collective Y as teachers who all come from HLP USD. So look at them. All right, let's continue. Mm-hmm. And here they are. So we're going to stay on this screen for a little bit, Ricardo, and I think we'll ask our first question here, if you don't mind. So our very first question, and we learned this from Ron, by the way, is to listen to everyone's stories. We want to hear a little bit about you, your story, how you got here to where you are today, and anything else you want to share. Whoever wants to go first can go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, so I'll go first. Can you hear me? Everything good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So first off, I want to apologize. I am currently in the softball field. I'm my daughter's 8U coach. So practice is still going on behind me. So if someone runs in right now, I do apologize. So my name is Wesley Perez. I've been teaching at La Puente High School since 2014. I do wear many hats. I teach AP US History. I am the AVID coordinator at my school site. This is the 7th year that I'll be training students to run the Los Angeles Marathon. So this is our 7th year. It's all grassroots, right? We get just the what the kids get out of it. I think it's so inspirational. So this will be our 7th year taking students through the marathon. We take kids that have never ran just in PE all the way to finish 26.2 miles in LA. We'll be actually running this weekend at La Puente, the 10K in the back. So we'll be doing that. But I taught a little bit of everything. And that's one of our pictures. This is during Zoom. I was super lucky and super blessed to be able to bring Silvia Mendez, one of the biggest pioneers in ethnic studies, and bringing in and desegregating schools, right? She was before Brown versus the Board of Education. And during Zoom, I was able to bring her on and have a conversation with our students. And it was so inspirational. Kind of my why and how I ended up getting here into ethnic studies was by accident, but it's been transformative. I've had a very tough time growing up, always feeling like I didn't belong for different reasons. I was in the military. I served in the United States Army for 8 years. And in those 8 years, it took me all over the world. And I was in Iraq and I was in Somalia. And it took me places where I never thought I would be. And, I was there because I wasn't a good student in high school. I just, things didn't come easy for me. And it was easy for me not to pay attention. Iraq and my experience there was extremely transformative. And I was lucky to leave alive. And I promised myself that I would do something. I didn't know what that was. And I ended up in education. And in the course of prepping to teach ethnic studies, it's a lot of ethnic studies for you. So you teach yourself what you're eventually going to teach the students. And I grew so much and I learned so much. I never knew that one of the things that I dealt with was my dad's from Puerto Rico, my mom's from Mexico. I never knew that I dealt with not being enough Mexicano, not being enough Puerto Riqueño. And then I always felt like I was never enough as an American because even though I would consider myself more American than most because of my service to the military and to my country, I always felt that I was in spaces I didn't belong. And ethnic studies has shown me that I am one in many, right? And when I saw that I was one of many Latinos, one of many Puerto Ricanos that have gone before me, and I never knew. That was what I think was shocking to me, that I never knew. As a advanced placement United States history teacher, learning about the massacre in Ponce, right? The connections between indigenous Tainos and colonization and Bad Bunny. Those incredible connections I've only learned as my experience through ethnic studies. So I am super lucky to be given this opportunity. And I think it has changed me as an educator, but as a human being. I think that I am now a better person all the way around. And I think of my own daughter and my own son. I think of however I treat my students are the exact same way my son and my daughter's teachers are going to treat them. So if I want to be good, if I want my son and my daughter's teachers to be good, I better be good. And so that's kind of my why. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Sardo.
Thank you for sharing, Wesley. And to kind of add on to what he was saying, the 5 of us with Ron spent a lot of time that first year really diving into our identity and being comfortable having those conversations. And a lot of us, we found some common ground, even though our experience was different, right? That intersectionality of being able to have these multiple identities, but then also to be able to be empathetic and relate to each other's struggles, and then kind of how does that play out in the classroom, right? When you have 30 plus students with all these different identities, and then how do you create that common ground so everybody feels safe and everyone feels valued? So this is my 17th year at Workman High School. So that picture you had in the intro brought back memories. I think that was from 2013 when Wright and I used to grab the kids and take them to USC on the weekend and work with the International Studies Department at USC, and our kids would just debate some of the current issues that were going on. And I think that kind of almost, led me to where I am right now. Because from there, the 2 of us spearheaded the Democracy Schools Initiative. Workman became one of the first schools in LA, one of the first 10 schools in LA County to be identified as a California Democracy School through civic action and civic engagement of our students, and really trying to help our students create that voice, right? Which is what ethnic studies is about, right? Creating your voice and being able to have your voice being heard. So when, our department chair at work kind of asked us who's interested in being part of the ethnic studies committee, it's like I wanted to jump up and be like, me, but I waited and let, kind of everybody else talk about it a little bit, and then, was fortunate enough to be able to take on this role of really being a first year teacher, for the first time in a long time, right? This idea of creating a course from the beginning, from the course outline to the course reader to the lesson cycles, but just really having an amazing team of educators that, I'm thankful to call my friends and my colleagues and my support system. And, we've laughed, we've cried, we've shared moments. It's like we know each other and our families with, for 2 years just being on Zoom. So it's been an incredible journey. And as somebody who grew up in a multi-ethnic, multicultural family, and myself having a multicultural family, really kind of understanding like how that is an asset, not a deficit, right? Because you grow up sometimes thinking, oh, well, you don't speak Spanish, so you are not, you can't claim to be Latina, or, I didn't grow up a lot with my Japanese culture. So, how does, like Ron said, how, it's never too late to reclaim that and learn about that. And, I really appreciate Ron for giving us kind of that pathway to do that, and then to be able to now take that down to our students and do that with them as well.
Thank you for both of you for sharing that. So moving and so true. And we're getting a lot of interaction from our chat, just people, saying, I hear you. That's how I feel myself. And, wow. Thank you so much. All right. So let's go ahead and continue. I know we're going to skip. Go ahead, Victor.
I just wanted to mention our other 3 ethnic studies teachers that couldn't be here, who are amazing. I've known Coach Robert Oviedo for over 20 years. That's actually him with his first ethnic studies class. And that picture right there, we have Andrew in here and Alex, who is going to join us later, but I wanted to make sure that I gave shout outs to them too.
Is it okay if I say a couple words
Yes,
about?
please, Ron. Yes.
Well, what's been really cool about Robert is Robert's at the end. Robert's at the end of his career, right? He's been in the classroom for 30 years, and he was willing to take on this like challenging new curriculum at his last few years of his career, and it's been so great to have him as a voice, as a leader in our space. And if you don't know Robert Oviedo, he is very thorough. So he brings in a very thorough historical analysis of readings and texts and ideas, and his lesson plans are very detailed. And I just really appreciate that he's been willing to work so closely with us, and have his legacy as a coach and as a teacher at Wilson High School. And Andrew, same. We spent time with Andrew today at LACO and at the Ethnic Studies Conference, and I always appreciate his perspective, his voice, and the way that he engages with his students in such a humanizing and uplifting way. And so I've been able to spend. Andrew's teaching 3 ethnic studies courses, so I kind of sometimes joke around like he's our ethnic studies teacher, right? Like that's the one content he teaches. He's also an athletic director, right, and oversees all of the athletic programs over at Los Altos. And so it's really cool to have them on the team. And we're gonna have Alex Lima come on a little bit later, and we can share some words about her too. She's joined our team this year and comes from such a wonderful heart and spirit place for our students.
So much experience and so many years at Hacienda La Puente Unified School District. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
All right, so let's just get started. All right, so what are some key concepts and themes that are covered in ethnic studies, especially for those who might be new to the conversation? Tell us a little bit about some key concepts and themes.
Well, one of the things that I think, realized early on because of the conversations that we were having just about ourselves and our identity is we really start off the year talking about just identity and doing the social identity wheel and having students talk about, how they perceive themselves and how they think others perceive them in order to be able to have those conversations. And then that also includes a lot of community building, right? A lot of class building, because if we're going to get deep into these topics and we want students to feel safe and accountable and that the space is, allowing them to have feelings, right? And to see things in different perspectives, we really needed to do a lot of work at the beginning to earn our students' trust, to earn the trust of each other, right? And to have that opportunity to share our stories and understand that, our stories are valuable and our experiences are valuable, to learning more about, the histories that we come from. So I think that, this identity really starts us off. And then the next thing we really tackle with the kids is the 4 eyes of oppression. So the talking about the institutional, the interpersonal, the internalized, right? And then how does that play out in our world? And then being able to then use that as a jumping off point and kind of a coming back to as we're looking at some of these historical events and connecting it to things that are currently happening in our lives today.
You're muted, T.
Sorry, my baby was crying in the background and I forgot. As I was listening to you, I was thinking to myself, wow, I think teachers and adults in general should be in that class. Right? So very, very powerful. I love that. I think Wesley is doing his coaching duties right now.
He's coming back.
There he is.
I'm here. Let me back away from the man. So I think one of the things about...
I just want to say when we started, Wesley was actually doing push-ups and laps, right? Before we started.
That's my team back there. So I think one of the things that we found more, I think the themes, that how they intersect. So having our students understand that just because I am not Native American doesn't mean I can't empathize with someone that's from Native America. I'll give you a perfect example. Being able to understand the struggles of the Native Americans, right? Being displaced, being colonized, having land removed. Then what we do is we'll make a personal connection, right? The kids don't know. The kids think they're watching Bad Bunny and El Apagón, and they're listening to music. But what they don't know is that the same way the land was taken away from Native Americans in the 1800s, right? It's 2023, 2022, 2021. Puerto Ricanos are being displaced currently right now in Puerto Rico by the tourism industry. And, it brought light to what is going on in Puerto Rico. And the kids were able to see the connections. Hey, mister, is that just a way like the Trail of Tears? I'm like, not exactly, but you can see connections. You can see the displacement. You can see the movement and what that looks like in 2023, 2022. And so when the kids can make those connections, they can realize, hey, my voice is important now. Not it's not history of, you know, 50 years ago that's not relative to me. This is someone that I'm listening to right before I walked into class, and what they're talking about is something that is going on now. And ethnic studies is now, not 20, and it's relative to you. And I think that's what the students are realizing, like, hey, I have a voice and I better use it.
When I'm silent, that's very rare. I'm processing everything you're saying. Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share. I think we could talk about this for the rest of the show, right? Key concepts and themes. But
Right.
one that's really near and dear to me is the concept of hope. Critical hope. And so this is a book. I think this book's maybe about a decade old. Hope on a Tightrope by Dr. Cornel West. I'm a big fan of Dr. Cornel West. I've learned a lot from his books, from his teachings, from his public commentary as a public intellectual. And one of the things that Dr. West talks about is the need and the importance of having critical hope in times of severe challenges. And we live in a world full of systems of oppression, full of challenges that our students know very well, right? And they know it because they live it. They know it because they see it on social media. They see it on the news. They know it because it's a part of what they experienced also with COVID-19. Like, we all have that collective experience, and they've also seen and witnessed, massive human rights struggles, right? The Black Lives Matter global uprising, happened recently. And so helping students to see that movements for social change, movements for immigrant rights, movements for racial justice, movements for LGBTQ rights are still ongoing. They're still ongoing, but there's also been really key victories in these movements, and helping students to study movements throughout history, social movements made up of people who look like them, talk like them, act like them, lived experiences like them, can inspire youth to be the change makers of the future. And we never quite know when that transformative moment is taking place. We don't, but those moments can happen. And it's our job as educators to try to equip our students with that hope. And I see that in Christine Sardo's class. I see that in Wesley Perez's class. I see that in Andrew and Robert and Alex's class, is that concept of hope that's so important. And sometimes we as adults, we lose hope. There's stress, like just the workplace, the environment, the conflicts, the things that we have to deal with as parents, the stress of trying to make a living, right, and feed our families and keep afloat. It's hard to maintain hope. But when we do that as adults and can impart that with students, they give us hope back. And that's a concept that I think is really important to ethnic studies. Some of my homies in the Bay Area, they talk about ethnic studies educators as hope dealers, right? And as hope dealers, we're dealing out that hope to young folks and hoping that they can be a part of that change that's coming, right? The change that's always happening and the change that's coming. So that's a concept that I always appreciate. Wes, you remember I was in your classroom last week. This is a story that was on top of my head right now. I was in Wesley's class last week talking about the 2006 Immigrant Rights Marches. And I was talking about when I was there, I was in college, and being a part of these immigrant rights protests and actions really was kind of like formative for me. And I said, hey Wes, where were you in 2006, Wes? Like what were you doing? I forget what you said. But can you tell that story a little bit, Wes? Because that was like this really special moment actually for me.
Yeah.
That taught me a lot about your story.
Yeah. So in 2006, May 1st, 2006, Ron asked, this is, hey, where were you? And I was like, well, I was working through my master's and I was going to Biola, getting my credential. And then he showed, the Workers' Day March, the May Day March that happened all over the streets in LA. I don't know if you guys all remember how huge that was and the walkouts and incredibly impactful. And I was like, wait a minute, I was there. And I remember that it's such a small world. I used to go to church in East Los Angeles. So I went to church, it's La Primera Iglesia Bautista Peniel, where we were filled with immigrants that were scared because of the law that was being passed. And so just like in the South, in the 50s and in the 60s, we organized in our church. And so, my mom and the people that went to church, they were so scared. And, I had just got back from the military. I had like this bravado of like, they're not going to do nothing to me. And so I ended up putting a sign on, let me see if I can find that picture and maybe you guys can share it. I ended up putting a sign that said, it's okay for me to fight your wars, but it's not okay for me to stay here. And very, very specifically, I had the American flag wrapped around my neck. Like I didn't have the Mexican flag or anything like that. It was the American flag because I'm proud to be an American, right? And so I remember when Ron said that, I was like, dude, I think I was there. And I was like, hold on, let me call my mom and see if my mom finds that picture because I ended up getting interviewed by NPR. And sure enough, right before the end, my mom calls me. She's like, ¿de qué foto estás hablando? Which picture are you talking about? And she found it. And in the midst of Ron's conversation, I was able to share it with him. And it was a really weird, awkward, but I didn't know that what I was doing was that I was just trying to help out Hermana Margarita and Hermana Luz that went to my church, and Brother Antonio and Brother Ramona, that they were so scared. And I was like, they're not going to hurt me. I wish they would, but they're not going to, right? Because I represented them, but I didn't think I was doing anything bigger besides just representing them.
Ron just sent us the picture, so we're going to find a way to show that a little bit later. But wow, thank you for, I just love the storytelling here. So let's keep that going. We're going to move on to the next question. And the next question is, can you share some transformative moments that you and your students have had while teaching high school ethnic studies courses?
Christine, can you go first?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll start us off because Ron kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the show. And I think all of us, because it's been great. The last 3 days, a mix of the 5 of us have really had a chance to really reflect on our ethnic studies journey. And we were able to actually present at the Los Angeles County Office of Education this afternoon to a group of educators who are in various stages of their ethnic studies journey. And it was just so powerful and validating of the work that we've been doing for the past 2.5 years to have so many educators come up to us and just in awe of what we're doing and thankful for sharing, kind of our story and some of the resources that we've been able to pull from and kind of just the way our brain is working and the way, our team is working. And I think when you're just deep in the weeds of things, sometimes you forget the impact that you're going to have when it's all said and done. right? And, you know, as we were standing up on this stage and I was watching my fellow educators present and talk about it, you know, like it moved me. Like we are, you know, and I tell my kids this all the time, like we are making history, like from last year's inaugural group to this year, like we are literally making history. And I think that really spoke to me today, you know, in the way that we were able to present and kind of uplift our students and ourselves in the work that we have been putting in and what we continue to do every morning when we come on campus. You know, and I think sometimes you don't necessarily see that impact right away on the day to day, but when you have those alumni come back or write in the chat, or, you know, you see things and you have students that come back and tell you, you know, that they're getting degrees in ethnic studies and they're writing dissertations, and, you know, they've joined the learning partners group for our ethnic studies, like that's when you know, sometimes those moments are like, yes, you know, like we have those aha classroom moments all the time, but like sometimes it's just bigger than that day to day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot, that's true. A lot of things, especially, you know, this topic here, with our classrooms, teachers don't see it in the day to day, and sometimes it comes later, and you know, so you have to keep going, you know, even though, and then you have these moments where our kids are in the chat, or you know, you see them along, and Ricardo just experienced that a lot less for me because I'm in elementary, so it's you know, far removed, but you know, no, definitely, I like how you made that point. Wesley, want to hear from you too. Are you ready? I know
Sure,
you're
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So like one of the moments where I felt, besides today, and we had that conversation as a group today about how incredible today was, because we thought we were doing something just to survive, right? When we put together our reader, right? It was a lot of, and one of the higher ups at LAUSD, I don't, Mr. Leva, Dr. Leva, Mr. Leva, he made a joke out of it. He's like, look, I can see your tears in your work. And he said it in jest, but I mean, there was tears. We, you know, we had to juggle so much. We had to juggle, you know, our outside responsibilities outside of work, and our professionalism, right? Because we have all AP courses. We have, you know, Masarda was doing WASC. She was in the midst of WASC, right? I run the AVID coordinator position at my school. Formal is the AD at Los Altos from all schools, right? So we have so much going on, but I think that the most transformative moment for me was when I was able to see this impact roll through our. Oh, dude, there's a picture.
I didn't mean to put that on right now. Continue.
Oh my God. We were having a class discussion, and one of the kids, because we're talking about identity and power and dominance, one of my students started talking, and she says, you know, I wear a lot of black because my mom told me to wear black because it hides how fat I am. And she was so comfortable sharing that my mouth dropped, and I was just like, what do I do next? And then one of our cheerleaders jumped on, and she said, oh, I understand what you're saying, but on a completely opposite level. She's like, I am skinny, and it's so hard to be skinny because if I gain one pound, everybody's going to see, and everybody's going to criticize me, and everybody's going to say, oh my God, you're getting fat. And so just because I look this way doesn't mean that I'm happy. And she started crying, and the other girl started crying. And I'm sitting in my class, and then I had another kid says, well, you think I want to dress like a cholo? I don't want to dress like this. I have to dress like this. Because if I don't dress like this, my brothers and my dad will bully me, and they're going to make me change. I don't want to have I want hair. I can't have hair. And he took off his hat. And he's like, I don't, because he had a beanie. And he's like, I don't want to have I want hair, but I can't have hair. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know what to do. I'm not a counselor. I'm not an interventionist. I was just trying to have a class discussion. But the fact that the kids felt so comfortable to be able to share like that and be open, I was like, what am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Did I open a can of worms that I'm not ready to even talk about? But all that did for the rest of the year, I couldn't have my students stop talking. They would just discuss, and I have 2 cents about everything, and I have something to say about that. And that moment absolutely not only transformed my classroom, but it transformed the way I saw this class.
Well, that is so powerful because you have given students a safe space. And I would assume that students probably wait for your class to come around because they spend a lot of their time being silent about things that are important to them. And, you're giving them that space to, know that if this is important to someone too, this is important to other people too. I'm not alone in this. And I wish in my high school experience that I had a class like yours, that I would have the space to do that. Because I think a lot of.
Can I share one more thing?
Yeah, yes, please do. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry. So I think one big step in all of this is
Mhm.
you as the educator, you have to be vulnerable.
Mm.
You have to put yourself out there first and I'm going to go on a big leap and I hope somebody catches me. So I'll give you a perfect example. My son, he is 5 years old and he has a speech impediment. So he has a stutter. And I tell my students, because he went to kindergarten this year, and I told them how scared I was and how helpless I felt because
Yes.
I worried about my son. And I got super emotional, and because I was talking about my son. And I
Mhm.
said, I worry about him because I'm worried that someone's going to bully him because he's not going to talk correctly, or someone's going to make fun of his stutter. And because they make fun of his stutter, he's not going to participate in class anymore. And I finished saying that. And one of the kids raised his hand and says, Mr. Perez, you're going to be okay. And your son's going to be okay. He says, I have a stutter and I've learned to live with my stutter. And he helped me and he hugged me at the end of class. And this happened like 3 weeks ago. Right? I'm over here like all teared up.
But Wesley brings up a good point. Like, if you want the kids to be able to discuss and talk, then you have to be willing to share your story as well, right? And I think a lot of times, like in teacher prep and education classes, like, like the old myth, like, oh, don't smile till winter break, and like, you can't be a teacher, you can't be a human being outside of the classroom. And I think that's not the correct approach. And until you break down that wall and kind of take away that insecurity, that I can share about I can share with my students, and I can be vulnerable and give them the opportunity to show that we all have emotions, and then we have empathy for each other. And that's how we learn to help each other out when we're having hard times, versus not looking away, or I'm sorry, or versus looking away or continue to walk. So thank you for sharing, Wes.
And, Ron has always told me that ethnic studies, at the core of it is telling stories. And I love hearing the stories that are creating connections, not only for us as adults, but also for our students, right? So different, the two stories, right? But making a connection based on those two stories from those two students. So thank you, Wesley, for sharing that.
And I feel, so inspired because I know you're talking about high school, but, our dream is that this will trickle down all the way down to elementary. And Ricardo, I know you have a story on this. Imagine having this type of environment for our kids, those who, I know Ricardo's daughter encountered some of this when she was younger. And imagine if she had a teacher who stood up for her, at that time and gave her a space like what you're doing for these kids. How powerful. Ron, did you want to say something here?
I mean, I wanted to thank Wesley and Christine, just for being vulnerable and sharing some of these stories because, as the intersectional ethnic studies coordinator here at HLPUSD, like we need a lot more people to teach the courses at the high school level. We need people at K-8 willing to engage in this work. And I know folks are already engaging in this work at K-8, which is beautiful and wonderful. And I'm excited to learn more alongside those teachers. And so I wanted to share just a brief transformative moment for me. I grew up in South Texas. I've shared before, I'm a second generation educator. I grew up with parents that taught me about culture and identity, but I didn't get that in school. And I didn't get the social justice or the movement work or that hope piece that I was sharing in school. And so I went to the East Coast, a small liberal arts college called Amherst College. I met Chicano poet Raul Salinas and Puerto Rican poet Luis Reyes Rivera. And the two of them, they changed my life. And just through their books of poetry, I was able to be transformed and have these moments. And I wanted to bring those types of educational experiences that I had to students when I started teaching. And one of the first schools I taught at when I left the school, one of my students gave me this beautiful painting of Raul Salinas because I had been teaching about him as this transformative figure in my life, And so one of the things that stands out to me a lot is I have a colleague of mine, a friend. Her name is Dr. Flori Buff Lopez. She's a professor at UCLA in the Chicano and Central American Studies Department. She's a Guatemalan Maya indigenous woman who went to school at Venice High School. And she talks about this. She went to a MECHA conference, or she went to a Chicano conference, right? And at that conference, there was somebody that spoke about Guatemalan history, about indigeneity, around migration, around the wars in Guatemala and El Salvador. And that moment was transformative for her. So she was sitting there as a 16, 17, I don't know how old she was, but now she's not just a professor, but like a leader in the field, right? Who's publishing and writing books. And Goldie Muhammad, she wrote a book called Cultivating Genius. And so like in that book, the thesis of her book is that we have genius students in our classrooms. And how are we cultivating their genius? And their genius could be so many different ways, right? Is it their artistic side? Is it their vulnerable side to be able to connect with others as social workers or therapists? Whatever it is, it's our job to kind of figure that out and build that and pull that out of them and help them to shine. And so we never know when that transformative moment is, but as also this show is reaching many people, we need more teachers that are willing to engage in this work so that we can really have like a movement for ethnic studies in Hacienda La Puente Unified. And it's got to be teacher-led, so I just appreciate y'all sharing those stories, and hopefully it's inspiring others to join the train.
Definitely. So that leads us to our last question of the night, and looking ahead, and I think we might have covered this a little bit already, but if you have anything else, what are your hopes and goals for the future in terms of ethnic studies and culturally inclusive teaching in general? Any hopes, goals, any wishes and dreams that you have for the future?
I mean, I think it has to do with what you guys said, just being more classrooms taking this approach, right? I mean, that's the goal, right? That it's not just happening in my classroom at Workman or Wes's classroom at La Puente, that, we're multiplying and we're, Ron keeps saying, build a coalition of the willing, right? Like get people on board who are willing to, do this work and bring it to more students, right? Because how are we ever going to impact more students if we don't get more educators on board to do that? So, I mean, and it's been awesome to see, schools that already have Chicano studies and African American studies and, Chicano mural art and statistics in ethnic studies and math. Like, that is, I think, like, we want to be there. We want to be able to provide that for our students because they deserve it. Not only do they need it, but they deserve it.
I think one goal I see or I hope for ethnic studies is besides the growth, because that's obvious. Like we want this concept, these ideas to be taught, because they show value and worth to our young adults. And I think that in an era and a time right now where society is so either divided or everything is el que dirá, what are they going to say? Um, the value in self-worth and teaching self-worth, right? I think is so important, especially our young minorities, right? Our people of color uh, and women and every single LGBTQ plus community that just needs to be reaffirmed that we belong. And so what does this look like going forward? I hope that it's a place where educators can come and have honest discussion and discourse like today. I mean, today was so validating. And I think that you forget that you live in a silo and you work alone, and then you're really good with like my 5 people here, and then everybody else hears your work and they're like, "Can I have your email? Yeah, here's my contact information. I'd love to share." And all of a sudden you're turning and you're like, "I guess we are doing something good."
Or people asking to come, can I watch you teach? Like strangers, coming up and wanting to come visit our classroom and engage with our students.
Yeah.
That was like,
yeah. And so we had today, we had a couple of, Glendale Unified was, willing, I talked to a teacher from Culver City as well. And they're like, how can we get in contact with you guys? How can we collaborate? And then LAUSD, one of the biggest districts, out there that has been doing this for a long time, we were able to have a discussion with them. And, they were like, let's keep in contact. Right. That is, and we're just 4 or 5 little high schools trying to do something for our students. Apparently not. And we have to, at the core of it. And we said that over and over again. And I think we need to say it, and Ron needs to hear it from us, that while we have been doing an incredible work, and I saw that today, none of this would be half as good or half of where it's at if it wasn't for Ron. And Ron, you need to take a bow, my boy, right? And own it. And you've been doing all this work for such a long time, and you haven't been recognized as the way it should be. My boy, if you need a hype squad, I hope that today we showed you that we're your hype squad. And,
we were like, there was like groupies waiting, and we were like, we're at the cool table. We rolled in with the rock star, with the royalty. So they showed yesterday. I have to share this story, Ron. Yesterday, the presenter pulled up Ron's TED Talk, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, it was already pre-planned, and then I saw you, and now you're here. So if people have questions, go to Ron afterwards. And like Wes said, like we have been so fortunate to be able to work with Ron for the past 2.5 years, and so incredibly excited that he is with us full time and, comes into our classroom and engages with our students and is co-teaching with us. And, he was the judge for our trial of Christopher Columbus the other day for my students. And, just to be able to do that and lead that. Yeah. I mean, we cannot be more grateful and blessed that he is here with us.
Oh my God, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. I receive it. I appreciate it. And I'm grateful to be working alongside everybody that's in this call right now. Y'all be inspiring me. So thank you for that. I receive it, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And so to end this series, we have one more slide coming from one of our administrators, just saying right here, ethnic studies has been a catalyst for student voice, not only in the classroom, but also in the community. Through shared experiences and respect for cultural diversity, students are empowered to advocate for themselves and others, both academically and socially. It has been an honor to watch ethnic studies come to fruition, not only at LPHS, but also throughout the district. So good job, you guys. I know you didn't need to hear that, but you inspire us. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for making a difference for these kids and for the future kids that are going to go through your classrooms, and for inspiring us teachers who want to be part of this. So thank you. Thank you for being on our show, and just thank you for all that you do. You guys are wonderful. All right, everyone else, and we will see you again in a few weeks, coming back with a brand new series. So hopefully you enjoyed this show. Reach out if you have any questions. We have experts here who are always willing to share. Have a great night, everybody.
And thank you, Dr. Lopez, for the quote. I want to make sure that was Dr. Lopez from La Puente High School. Bye-bye.
Yes.